All right, this week on the latest episode of The Big Show, the 31st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania hits theaters this weekend, and to discuss the first film in Phase 5 is our special guest, critic Jamie Broadnax of Black Girl Nerds. Plus, we remember the life and legacy of Raquel Welch, as well as the latest diagnosis for Bruce Willis. We'll have all that and more on episode 526 of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon. Charles Kirkland, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well on this warm, summery type winter day.
All right, and Jamie was there at the beginning, and then when I came back, it's like, I guess she's coming back in. So Jamie Broadnax joins us. Is this the first time you've ever been on this show in 526 episodes?
Wow, 526. Wow. Congratulations, by the way.
Damn.
And yes, my first time.
Season 13 is your first appearance on the show. Wow. That's on me. I mean, because Jamie, see,
it is on you.
It's on me, Charles, because I hung out with Jamie. We like in LA at something like a couple of months ago. I'm sure we did. I always hang out.
Toronto,
wait a minute.
New York.
Weren't you and I at the bar clowning that drunk dude that day when y'all didn't come and give me any help? And he was yeah. Thanks, Jamie. So it was that rooftop lunch that we had. We hung out in Toronto. That was really fun. Where we shared a table and talked about people.
Had lunch.
Yeah,
talked about some folks. Yeah.
So Jamie and I. So that's on me, Charles. I mean, if Jamie is she makes her appearance at the first 525 shows, we never had Jamie. That's my fault.
I think you've been hiding Jamie from me just so you can have all the stories to yourself.
You were supposed to have met Jamie at Sundance, but Jamie, of course, shared with us that she had an emergency and could not be at Sundance, where, thank God, she missed about 6 or 7 straight single-digit days. So, yeah, Sundance was really cold this year.
Yeah, I mean, I thought global warming was supposed to be a thing, but I guess not.
Look, Jamie. I've been to Sundance about 8 times. It was never as cold as it was this year. It was single digits every day at Sundance.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes. So. What about the snow? Was it snowing a lot, or
it snowed a little every day? It just some days it was heavier than others, but it never really got to like an accumulation of snow. But we had flakes.
I've been to Sundance when it snowed like 25, 30 inches. So I've been there when it snowed. But no, this year was just extreme cold to me. And I mean, I told Charles I went out one night, I think it was a Sunday night, to watch the football game on Main Street. And I only had on like a single pair of long johns. And I learned my lesson. I doubled up on long johns the rest of the trip because I was like,
Tim was rocking one of those big fat goose coats that they've been jacking people around DC lately for.
Yeah, I had a huge Canada Goose coat that was so big, Jamie, that I took it in a carry-on bag by itself. It was like a 10-pound Canada Goose coat, the Snow Mantra. It was an amazing coat.
I'm sure it felt good.
Yes, it did, sister. Yes, it did. So we got lots of film to talk about today, and before we get into Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I want to start off by saying that Jamie, have you had a chance yet to see the early sneak of Creed 3?
No, I don't get those privileges like you guys do in the bigger markets. So
man, you could have came up. You know what was really ironic? Because I remember you and I talked about this on Travis's show yesterday when you were guesting, and you were like, "Man, I'm not driving 2.5 hours to DC." And as soon as I get in the theater, the first person we saw was a woman from Charlottesville, Virginia, who had driven 2 hours and a half to see Creed 3, which we watched yesterday. So,
okay, first of all, it doesn't take 2.5 hours from where I am. I'm in Virginia Beach. It's like a good maybe
Oh,
3.5
Oh,
hours.
okay. I'm sorry. I thought you.
Yeah.
All right. My apologies.
Yeah, Charlottesville is more in the center of Virginia. So yeah, good on her traveling. I'm sure it was to see Jonathan Majors.
Well, here's what I would say, because I can't really say anything about Creed, except I will just say this one thing. And this is not even my quote. This is from Travis, and I agree with it. That I think women are going to get pregnant just watching Creed 3. Because it was amazing yesterday. Look, there was a publicist, a former publicist from Allied, who I haven't seen her, Charles, in like 10 years. She came to the screening yesterday, and every time Jonathan Majors was on the screen, I'll just literally say it looked orgasmic. That's kind of what it reminded me of. I mean, seriously, because at one point it just got so funny. I kept peering down the road like, "You all right?" So having said that, I lead into this that the news yesterday at Fox Searchlight picked up Magazine Dreams, which Jamie.
Yes.
Have you seen that one?
I did. I saw that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was able to see Sundance from home, even though I wasn't there physically. So yes.
So I think I shared this story, Charles. I'll say it again because I don't think Jamie's heard it. Producer F.E.T. Brown, who we gave the Vanguard Award at the Black Reel Awards, was at the screening, right? And she and I have known each other for years. So I run into her before the film, and then I talked to her after the film. And man, as many flaws as that movie has to me, and I think that Fox Searchlight is going to probably cut about 20 minutes out of it. And because there's a really good film in there, I just don't think it's a really good film right now, right? But Jonathan Majors' performance in Magazine Dreams, mwah,
he's out of this world
in that film. And if you didn't get enough Jonathan Majors in Creed 3, wait until you get a load of Jonathan Majors in Magazine Dreams. Yeah. Jamie,
because he worked out his physical build was to prep for that role. It wasn't for Creed 3, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was for Magazine Dreams. So
correct. He bulked up for Magazine Dreams, and then he slimmed down and shot Creed 3.
Man, so that's amazing, man. So Jonathan Majors, boy, I'm telling you, between him being in the film that we're about to talk about, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, he had Devotion. Jonathan Majors, I don't know when this dude ever takes a break, man, because if you got all these movies, when are you not working?
I know.
He is literally Kang. He is Kang. He's everywhere.
And I just want to say, I was checking for Jonathan Majors back in 2018 or 2019 Sundance when he did The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Yeah. He was excellent in that film. And I was like, this guy is a star. So I was checking for him back then. Like everybody's like, oh, I love Jonathan Majors because I love Craft Country. I was like, oh, I've been like him.
Yeah, he was around already. Look, we talked about Creed 3. I'm like Jamie. I did not see the super special secrets screening that happened yesterday.
Wasn't that super special? You all knew about it. You just didn't. Y'all kill me like it's some super special.
No.
Jamie knew about it.
I didn't see. The reason why I didn't go to the screening was because this was one of those few movies that my wife decided that she really wants to see. So I could not go to see the screening and not take her with me. Unfortunately, she was at work at the time. So I got to wait for another couple of weeks to watch the screening so I can take my wife with me.
So Monique wanted to see this one, huh?
Yes.
Shocker. Shocker. That your wife wanted to see this one. So, all right. So Magazine Dreams picked up. Jamie, you watched the film. How much? I mean, because me and Charles have been talking about it. I think, as I said, I think there's a lot of editing. I know exactly, and I don't want to really spoil it. There's a section in the film that they kind of introduce, play with, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. And I think personally, you could just take that whole sequence out the film, and that I think would really help the film some. But I think that if Fox Searchlight plays their cards right, and this film could see a September, October release. And if you put some money into Jonathan Majors, I think you got a shot because he's really, really strong in this film. He really is. What do you think?
I agree. I know exactly what scene you're talking about, where his character has a moment of indecisiveness, if you will. And yes, that definitely needs some cutting. I am glad that Searchlight Pictures has bought it. We'll see exactly. I don't know much of their history when it comes to awards campaigning, but I mean, what we've seen with Andrea Riseborough and her nomination with To Leslie, I think that it's okay that folks try to galvanize and get together independently and try to rally around Jonathan Majors. And if he can get that grassroots campaign, if Searchlight doesn't get behind him the way they should, then that should be enough to get him the nomination. But he definitely is gonna need some support from people, because my concern is, are enough people going to see it because of the tone of the film? Because it is very dark, and there's people that probably don't even want to see the movie because of how dark it is.
Well, I'm gonna say this, Jamie. If people turned out to see The Whale and could give Brendan Fraser the love that he got in a very, very, very dark movie, I don't see how hard it would be for Magazine Dreams to get the same kind of recognition. On top of the fact that I hate to see what the Oscars going to do about cracking down on what happened with To Leslie, that it may not be able to be possible for him to do the same thing with Magazine Dreams. And we'll see. But I am of the impression that as soon as that thing is released, he's becomes one of the front runners in the category.
All right. So, and I agree with both of you. So, all right. So we will continue to monitor Jonathan Majors. We will, of course, talk about him a little more in this show. And when you guys talk about Fox Searchlight, you've got a situation where I know Rye Lane was Rye Lane Fox Searchlight too?
Yes, that's also Searchlight. Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question. They also picked up, is that 1001? Is that Fox Searchlight too?
That's Focus Features.
That's Focus. Okay. All right. I know Focus Fox. So Fox Searchlight is, I keep calling them Fox Searchlight. They're Searchlight now. But right. It's interesting the types of films that they're picking up. And I just did a piece around town yesterday for Rye Lane, which won't be available, and 1001, which won't be available until the end of next month on WETA TV. But there were some films at Sundance that I really am very interested in how they're going to slot some of them, as we're talking about, potential Fox Searchlight campaigns. Jamie, did you see Young Wild Free?
I did. I did a review for that.
Mm-hmm. Charles?
No, I did not see Young Wild Free.
Oh my God, Jamie! Yeah, I had a lot of fun with Young Wild Free.
I loved it.
Oh my God, yes, me too. I thought it's the kind of story that typically you don't see them make black. They don't usually do African Americans or black folks with stories like that. That was really interesting. The whole composition of that film and the different twists that they used in the film, which I thought were really effective. So
I love the twist. I saw some reviewers said that they thought the twist was very predictable. I didn't see the twist coming.
Did you see? Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't see it coming either.
I didn't see it coming at all. A lot of people compare the film to like a Black Euphoria, and I guess kind of like the actress has this like Manny Pixie Girl kind of vibe. Right. But I absolutely loved it. And Sanaa Lathan, can we just say, like, I feel like her performances between that and then her performance in On the Come Up, which it's sort of similar. Like she's this single parent, it's just criminally underrated as far as just how stellar her performances are. So hopefully she gets a little bit of recognition. I don't know if it's going to get to the awards.
I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it. But I agree with you, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
So we're talking. Yeah, I think we're talking about a lot of the Sundance stuff that we've had an opportunity to see that you guys will see a little later on. I got to do some of my lighting because I look crazy over here. How about that? Is that a little better? Okay, that's good. I'll just turn the light off. All right. So I wanted to pivot yesterday, right before the screening started for Creed 3, we all looked at our devices and found out that Raquel Welch passed away at the age of 82 yesterday. And this is long before Jamie. Jamie's young. She doesn't have, like, Charles and I both have gray on our chin, so you can tell. So Jamie, feel free if you don't have any Raquel Welch stories like we will have, because, you know, I was telling somebody yesterday, I said, Raquel Welch, before Pam Grier came along and, like, all the brothers fell in love with her doing Foxy Brown and Coffee, there was 1 million year. I mean, what was it? 1 million BC.
1 million BC.
There was 100 rifles. Raquel Welch. Yes, sir. She was hot. She was fine. And you talk about Bandolero, Bedazzled. She made a bunch of movies, man, in that period of, like, the mid 60s to, like, the early 1970s. Her career later on, of course, she did television and had some movies, but her height was when she was much younger as that real sex symbol. And to this day, I don't know if Jamie's ever seen 1 million BC. Not really that good of a movie, right? But it's notable because of Raquel Welch and what she brought to that film. And I'm gonna let Charles, because before I get in trouble, Charles, what memories do you have of Raquel Welch?
Everybody had that poster. I'm telling you, when she comes up out of the water in that fur bathing suit, yeah, everybody had that poster. She came in a very special time. It was right about the time of Marilyn Monroe's passing that she carried the flame of being a bombshell for Hollywood for a good little while. And thankfully, she showed that you didn't have to be blonde and blue-eyed to be sexy. And that was one of the things that was really special about Raquel, was that she was a Latin lover. And so it was good to see someone of color when you're growing up as that symbol that so many people long for. So I've seen her in lots of films, and I mean, she's done stuff right up until a couple of years ago. So always been an icon in the industry just because of the groundbreaking that she had done earlier in her career. But I mean, she's a legend, and you know, we lost a great one.
So Jamie, you see what I did there? Because, you know, before I was going on how hot she was, I was like, let me just throw it to Charles, because Charles will bring he'll bring a little gravitas. Thank you, Charles.
I'm the cooler.
You are.
Keeps it neutral.
All right. So, and Jamie, did you have any memories of watching any of her films that kind of stuck out for you?
I have a Inception, sort of a memory within a memory. I remember the poster, which was a very pivotal moment and forwarded the plot in the movie The Shawshank Redemption. You remember
Absolutely.
that?
There you go. All right.
That was a that was a remarkable moment for the plot and the character. And yeah, so it's an Inception moment. And that came from the same movie, right? That poster?
It did indeed. It did indeed. So yes, so thanks. So Raquel Welch, 82 years old, man. What a career she had. She has left us. And then we pivot to a guy, and this story is really kind of close to my heart, because his rise was when I was, like, in my early 20s, when I was really getting into films, was Bruce Willis, man. I mean, first time I remember, and I know he's retired, so, and he's not dead, but the fact that they announced today that he's now diagnosed with dementia, you know, and I forget what it's actually called. I think the
frontotemporal dementia.
Frontal temporal dementia, right? FTD. Bruce Willis, man, the first time I ever saw him, or the first time he ever stood out, was Moonlight, right? You know, the series with Shepard. And then he went on, I think Bruce Willis, maybe in my memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, he may have been the first actor I ever remembered who had I'm gonna make one for me and make one for the studio. So he would always make these big budget films, and then he turned around and make these small indies And I don't remember anybody ever doing that to that level, like an actor who was that huge, who was an A-list actor who would make these small independent films. And then he'd make a big film, and then he'd make a small film. So I love Bruce for doing that. And man, that's pretty sad, man. This guy's 67 years old. So think of it this way. Denzel Washington just turned what? 66? 66. Yeah, I think they're about the same age. Him and Bruce Willis about the same age. Bruce, Denzel Washington has been acting for 40. He's been a leading man for 41 years. 41 years. And they're literally the same age. So the fact that Bruce Willis had to retire and now he's diagnosed with this terrible disease, man, like at 67 years old. 67 is not that old.
No,
very
young.
Very, very young. So anybody with some good Bruce Willis stories, man. I mean, and don't talk about Hudson Hawk and don't talk about Bonfires of the Vanities, movies that were really not good Bruce Willis movies. Matter of fact,
No Blind Date.
What about Die Hard? Oh, yeah. I remember that one, too. What was the one he did with the Sandwich Board with Sam Jackson? Was that Die Hard?
With a Vengeance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Bruce had some good films, but yeah, Bruce took the money, man. I mean, him, Schwarzenegger, and Stallone were the Planet Hollywood dudes. That's how big Bruce Willis was at his height. So he was a huge A-list star for a period of about 10 years in the mid 80s to early 90s. So yeah, pretty sad, man. I mean, you think about, the longer we're around, we start seeing people whose work we admire. These folks, man, just start leaving us one by one, man. So I feel like almost every week on the show, Charles and Jamie, we're talking about, oh man, we lost this person. This person's gone. This person's gone. So it's the circle of life, man. So, yeah. But Bruce is still here with us. You guys kind of looking shell shocked, man. You can talk. You can laugh about Bruce. Bruce is still here.
Bruce is still with us. So I mean, he's got a wonderful career. I mean, who can forget him being Joe Hallenbeck in The Last Boy Scout? I mean, that was a great movie.
Yes, that's my favorite of his, actually.
That's your favorite?
That's your favorite?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What about Pulp Fiction? What about The Sixth Sense? Come on, he's done some really good stuff.
Oh no, but I mean, to me, for Bruce Willis, the highlight of him as an actor is when he's able to do comedy and action. That's like, he's at his best in those moments. So that's why I like The Last Boy Scout. I mean, of course, the Die Hard franchise is how I got introduced to Bruce Willis. And Moonlighting, I do remember watching like reruns of Moonlighting back in the day on Nick at Night. But yeah, I love The Last Boy Scout because that was like one of the few like buddy two-hander films that just was really good, even though like it was critically panned when it first came out.
So the last really good Bruce Willis, because toward the end of his acting career, he was making all these B-level movies that were really beneath his talent. But Glass with M. Night Shyamalan, that was a good one for Bruce Willis. So I like that a lot. Motherless Brooklyn, where, he had a small role in that. I thought he was pretty good in that. Mm-hmm. Going through some of his filmography right now. Oh, Red. Remember him, Helen Mirren, Morgan Freeman, Red 1, Red 2. Mm-hmm. Looper is another good Bruce Willis film.
Mm-hmm. Looper, which introduced us to Ryan Johnson, who's one of my favorite guys right now. I'm real big fan.
He's killing it.
What about Planet Terror and Grindhouse? Bruce Willis.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. See, y'all keep sleeping on Bruce. Bruce made some movies, man. Unbreakable. Yeah, another M. Night Shyamalan movie. I know Jamie loved the whole 9 yards. She just wouldn't tell us she loved it, but she liked that one a lot. And of course, the Die Hard
corny comedy.
Man, come on.
Yeah.
Don't forget Sin City.
Oh, yes. That's right. I passed right by Sin City. And Mortal Thoughts was the one that he made.
Mortal Thoughts is great.
Demi Moore, and I really liked him a lot. But it's funny. Did somebody clown him about Blind Date? Because Blind Date was good and terrible.
I mentioned Blind Date. I'm like, it's good and terrible.
Kind of a fun movie though. It was really campy and schlocky, but it was fun at the same time. And it was Bruce Willis just being straight comedy. back in the day. It wasn't. It was not the comedy action that he came to be known for.
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all. Okay, so I done put this thing off as long as I could, man. So we're gonna have to get in it right now. We got about 35 minutes, man. We 25 minutes in our show. 35 minutes ago, it is time for us to now pivot to the 31st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first film in Phase 5. It is none other than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. All three of us have seen this film. Charles and I sat in the same theater and watched it. And all I can say before we even start talking about it, it was a visceral reaction at the very end of this movie with the critics in the room. And I was sitting there and like, it was almost as if people watched it and then they had to absorb it for like a millisecond. And then people got up. And Charles, you bolted out and left, man. But there were conversations that went on for about a half an hour after this movie, man, where people, I'll just basically say that they were nonplussed about this movie, man. So
nonplussed. What does that mean?
Nonplussed. I mean, that's a nice way of saying that there was a lot of disappointment. The smell of mendacity was in the air. There were lots of conversations that people were having about, man, Marvel is tripping. Y'all need better. What do they call it? Better, not checks and balances, but y'all need to learn how to edit and have more controls. So it's very interesting. So let's get into this film, man. So of course we bring back Paul Rudd. We bring back, of course, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas. We don't necessarily introduce, but now I guess we are introducing him into an MCU film. We did meet Jonathan Majors in Loki about a year and a half ago, but now this is his first MCU film. So Jonathan Majors comes aboard. And, they've told us that, I don't know what they told Jamie, but they told us we couldn't even do any spoilers until like the 27th. So I was like, so the movie's going to be out and then next week we can't spoil it next week? So I will literally say that if you watched, the first two Ant-Man films, you pretty much know that Ant-Man, of course, at Endgame spent some time in the quantum realm because he went down there to get something out. The blip happened, so he was stuck. He comes out. Well, actually, he didn't get stuck in Endgame. Which end scene of movie did he get stuck in the quantum realm when everybody disappeared? What was the movie before that?
Ant-Man 2.
Was that the end of Ant-Man?
Yeah, Ant-Man 2. And it was Janet that got stuck, wasn't it?
No, it was him. Remember, because he comes back in Endgame. And that
Scott gets stuck in the quantum realm, and everybody else got blipped.
Right? That's what happened. So, man, we've watched these movies, and I'll explain how I explain to people all the time that everybody comes to me at the end of each one of these films, and they'll ask me, "Well, what do you think about the film?" And I go, to me, it's like a huge quilt, right? So every time they make a movie, you stitch another what do you call it? Like another panel on a quilt. And, you got 31 panels on the quilt right now. And so I don't look at these films, with the exception of Captain America's Winter Soldier, that any one of them may be better than the other. I mean, some of them I'm a little more disappointed in. Some of them are a little better, but it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? So each film is designed to kind of move the story along. So I will just say, I'll start with Jamie since you're the guest. Jonathan Majors, they don't necessarily introduce him in this film because, as I said previously, we've seen him before. This was the third film for Ant-Man, which usually, as a rule, each character gets 3 films. So I will ask you first and foremost, question 1 is, how much did this story move the MCU along? And B, if this is Paul Rudd and Ant-Man's third and kind of final film, what does it say about how because I think they just basically really disrespected this dude. Because this movie leaves him in a place where there's no resolution, but a lot of anxiety moving forward. So, Jamie, how far did it move it along? And what does it say about this being the third film in the Ant-Man franchise?
When you say how far did it move it along, you mean like Kang's story or just the whole entire story of Ant-Man?
Well, I would say the Kang story, because the Kang story, Kang is going to be the huge villain in phase 5 going into phase. I think he's the villain all the way to the end of phase 6, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, they're going to make him the new big bad of Marvel. So yes.
Right. So how far did we move that story along? And then that quilt that I'm talking
Not very far. Not very far. And I think that was intentional. Yeah, I think that's intentional. They don't want to give you too much of Kang. Like, we didn't even really get an origin story. We got a little bit of the origin story between Janet and his relationship with her and the quantum realm and how that all came to be. But we didn't get an origin story of Kang himself, which I think is intentional because they're going to break it up into those future films. We've got Avengers, the Kang Dynasty that's going to be coming out. So yeah, it wasn't moved along very far. And I agree with you. I feel like Scott should have gotten a better exit, but we are going to see Scott in other films. So maybe they'll show more of Scott's journey in the other films, but it's kind of sad that he didn't get a really good send-off in this one. It did feel like it was just like, okay, this is it. We're gonna leave you hanging, and we're not really gonna tie this up in a nice little bow for you. But I can't recall the last time that they've done that with any like 3-part franchise. They didn't really do that for Iron Man 3.
Oh man, Iron Man 3 was horrible. That was the ones that didn't.
They didn't do that with Tony Stark's story. So I mean, hopefully they'll do that with Guardians, but we'll see.
Well, I was gonna say, and even in Captain America's last film was really an Avengers film. So, and you know, to your point, they kept Captain America around. But when I say in your last film, meaning that like this is the last time I think they're going to make a film that's Ant-Man specific. So you would think that they would do a better job of giving him, to your point, a send-off, or of saying, well, thank you, Ant-Man, or something. But damn, he was just like a passenger riding in his own movie, like, I'm just going to ride along. So Charles, to you, I go, how far did it move it along? And what do you think about this being the third film in this franchise?
Well, I agree with what Jamie has said to an extent. I don't think this is the last we'll see of Ant-Man. I think just like the other characters, when they get to this last film, they'll resolve his story in the rest of the tale. So when we get down to Avengers, when the Kang Dynasty comes together, I believe he's going to have a bigger role because he's been the one Avenger who's actually defeated a Kang. Ooh, did I just say that? I don't know. But anyway.
Marvel's on the phone. Yeah, he said.
Wait a minute.
Well, I need to edit that part out.
And so anyway, so it's going to have a resolution that comes down the line somewhere where, because he's come out the movie. He doesn't have, just like Captain America didn't have a resolution in his, or Iron Man didn't have a resolution in his, and Thor was the only character to have 4 movies. So there's hope for Ant-Man. No one has said that this is his last film. So maybe we'll have something that's down the line, phase 6, 7, or something later on.
All right. Let me correct myself.
We still have Catherine Newton's character that they're going to develop. So we don't know if that's going to be in another Ant-Man franchise or whether they're going to be Young Avengers or something along that line. Right. So there's still stuff in there that has to be fleshed out.
So I was going to say, let me correct myself. And when I say it's not the end of Ant-Man, I'm talking about it as a standalone film because they generally get 3. I think Thor is probably the only character that I know that got 4, that they did 4 of his stories. And then again, I think we're also doing the audience a disservice because pretty much the premise of it is that Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyke, along with Hope's parents, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyke, and Lang's daughter Cassie, go on a new adventure, exploring the quantum realm that pushes their limits and pits them against Kang the Conqueror. A movie that may not have been dark in tone, but when they turned the lights on, I went, oh my God, damn. It was dark, man. I felt like that quantum realm, man. I mean, despite the fact that they had some light down there, they needed more light. That was a dark.
Well, it is space.
Yeah,
there's not really a lot of light there.
Bad CGI,
inner space, not outer space. So I mean,
yeah, it's like a form of outer space. So you can't really have light down there, I guess. But I get what you're saying.
And let me correct this. As we're going at this. Thor has really only had 2 movies. Because there's 2 different Thors. The first 2 movies of Thor are different than the last 2 movies of Thor. So you can actually say that there's 2 different Thors, which makes Ant-Man one of the only characters to have 3 films, like Iron Man and Captain America.
Okay, I got you. All right, so that's right. Okay, so what can we talk about this movie? Because I don't want to just draw the ire of the Marvel police, man. But I will pretty much say that I watched the movie with a level of curiosity. I go into each one of these movies, Jamie, I swear to you, I have no expectations, right? I'm like, okay, just tell me the story, man. And then the other thing that just always bothers me, and I know Charles and the guys always get on me, is I always feel like people who, and this is not a negative, if you're a comic nerd, right? Like if you read these comic books, there's a certain intuitive understanding that you have of these films or at least these characters that regular lay people don't have, right? So I always feel like when I'm watching these movies, like I'm in the not cool. I'm like sitting at the small table watching the movies where all of the nerds are sitting around going, ooh, and this character's gonna do that, and I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff. So I always feel like I'm at a disadvantage watching these films, whether they're from the DCU, the MCU. So for you guys who are comic purists, what did you think about this story? How much did they tweak the story? How much did they change it? How much of it did you already kind of know and expect? Jamie, I'll start with you.
Well, 100%, to be honest with you, I'm not an Ant-Man fan, and I am not familiar with the Ant-Man comics. But I do know that historically, Marvel, when they have done these adaptations, whether it's on small screen with the Disney Plus shows or on the big screen from the comics, they always deviate. Like they don't ever go by exactly the same story that's outlined in the comics. So even though people that read the comics are like, are they going to do this? Or I'm glad that they did that or whatever, there's always going to be a little bit of creative liberties that the filmmakers take with the story. That being said, I mean, I heard from people that saw it that are fans of MODOK that they were disappointed, that there's been some mixed feelings towards that character. I do remember seeing that character in other forms of entertainment. So I do sympathize with those fans. But yeah, I mean, I don't know much about the Ant-Man original source material to really judge how this film did the adaptation, because I didn't read those comics and I didn't read much about him when I was reading comics back in the day.
Charles?
So the funny thing is, you were probably one of the guys that made fun of the guys sitting at the table and reading all the comic books, and now it's our turn. It's our turn to make fun of you. So ha. But yeah, and honestly, a lot of the stuff that comes from the comic books aren't straight into the movies, and so when we really get an opportunity to geek out is when they do take a little piece from the comic books and put it into the movies. So that is exciting for us because it's relevant. We're thankful for the honor and respect that they give to the comic books, but it would be very boring if they just ran a comic book story in the movies, because then we would be sitting there the whole time like, I know where this is going, I know this and that. So I appreciate the fact that they deviate from the story and give us little pieces that we can recognize as a comic book watcher. So I would say I know you go into these movies with no preconceived notions. I say that's the best way to do it, and because in actuality we're doing the same thing. We go to the movies expecting things, and Marvel always does something different. So we need to stop going in with their preconceived notions and just enjoy it for what it is, good or bad.
And sometimes those changes are necessary, because like Tony Stark in the comics, he's a horrible person. He's an alcoholic. Oh, yeah. He's an abuser. So you don't want to see that person representing like a Disney Marvel kind of film. So the fact that they changed that, and really it's a true testament to Robert Downey Jr. He really shaped that character with his personality. So that's a situation where when they deviate, it's done in a way that actually benefits and services the character. Because yeah, if you did everything the way it is in the comics, it might not play well for audiences.
Well, I'm going to do a quick pivot because I was sharing this with Charles. My favorite superhero, who's actually not a superhero, is Batman, right? So the last movie I went into with preconceived notions was The Dark Knight. And I remember how lathered up I was emotionally because they put out like 12 trailers for this. And I remember calling one of the reps at Allied who saw it early, and she was like, Tim, you wait until you see this movie, man. You haven't seen this kind of movie before. I was like, okay, so I'm hyped. I went gaga for The Dark Knight, which I still think, arguably, to me, might be the best adaptation of a film from a comic book character I've ever seen, right? So I was telling Charles this week when they released the trailer for The Flash, and with the Flashpoint storyline with, you saw Ben Affleck, and of course you get to see Michael Keaton. And I believe they haven't leaked it yet, but we're going to probably see Christian Bale in this one as well. I told Charles, like, for all the people who had, what was it, Spider-Man, No Way Home? Was that the name of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to have that moment where I'm just going to be like, my brain is going to explode in the theater. Like, oh my God, all the Batmans are on screen. So I love Batman, man. But to your point, Will, as I'm taking it back to Marvel, I do think one of the things that we really do need to address is that as we start phase 5, phase 4 was a huge letdown after the buildup of the first 3 phases of the MCU, right? And no disrespect, I mean, it's nothing, you lose a Robert Downey Jr., you lose a Chris Evans, you lose, unfortunately, a Chadwick Boseman who I believe they probably would have elevated him and put him into a leadership position in some of these films, at least in the Avengers, if he was still around, but you lose him. So Marvel took a lot of hits, and then that, along with the pandemic, where they just oversaturated the airwaves, man, with all these Disney Plus series that they had. And then they got to a point where, at least when they initially started, they were trying to tie them to the movies that were coming out. And then I think the whole thing with the pandemic, pushing Black Widow back a year, and the timelines got messed up. So, Jamie, am I off base by saying that there needs to be more creative control inside of Marvel? Because I feel like they're actually starting to oversaturate the market with these movies. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. It's something called Marvel fatigue that a lot of fans are coining. And I agree. I think that they need to dial it back a little bit, because, in earlier phases, we didn't have all of these Disney Plus shows and so many releases. And we appreciated we waited for that buildup, and we appreciated the big film when it came out. So I think you're right. I feel like there's just a lot of oversaturation right now, and they don't have to release 4 or 5 different shows at once. And that would be a little bit more digestible for fans than to just, do what they're doing now. And maybe there's too many cooks in the kitchen too, because with all of these different Disney Plus shows, there's different writers behind it, different showrunners, and these films and these shows are supposed to, like you reference, like a knitted quilt, and they're right, supposed to kind of be stitched together. It's a little difficult to do that when you have so many different people at the helm putting these stories together.
So, Charles, where does Moon Knight fit in the quilt?
Nowhere.
We don't know.
Right. I'm just being facetious. Like Hawkeye, Moon Knight. Now, Loki, I liked a lot. WandaVision, I thought was pretty good. Captain America Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then it just became too much, Charles. Like, slow down, man. Damn.
I mean, if you think about it, in the beginning, we were getting one, maybe two movies a year, which was a really good pace. Now you're getting 2, 3, 4 properties in a year. It's way too much to keep up with, much less to digest, much less to understand, much less to make cohesive, because you got so many properties that you're trying to mesh together for whatever purpose. So yeah, it can be tiring, and that's what we're looking at. Maybe and unfortunately, DC is ramping up their production to kind of mirror. And so now we've got the fatigue that Marvel is making. It might start seeping over to DC, and it's not their fault. It's just that all of a sudden we're just tired. There's just too much.
So Jamie, I have a question for you, right? Because in the first 3 phases, we knew it was Captain America, it was Thor, it was Iron Man, it was the Hulk, right? And then we kind of built off of that. We had little Guardians over here. We introduced Black Panther. So now in phase 4, Black Widow, which was a movie that should have come out a year earlier. So the timing and all of that stuff was just horrible, right? So there's nobody to blame for that. What do we do with Shang-Chi, the Eternals? I'm trying to think of all these movies that Marvel has kind of introduced, and I don't see anywhere in the planning, unless these characters are going to come back as single characters, all mixed in the Avengers mix. The Eternals, which I thought they took a huge chance with Zoe. How do you pronounce her name? Zoe Chow?
Zoe Chow. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow. Zoe Chow. The tone of that film and the amount of people they tried to introduce, I think, just confused people. It really did. It confused me, right? Shang-Chi, I didn't think was bad. But my point is that you can't keep throwing stuff against the wall and then well, if that works, because we're still talking about a universe and we're still talking about a quilt. And how do these characters that you introduce service the greater MCU? Like, do you just leave Shang-Chi hanging and we just don't see him again for 3 years? Or we have the Eternals, we introduced them, it didn't work, so we don't see them again? And help me with this. I'm the guy that's just a film critic watching these films, trying to understand what Marvel's kind of phase plans are, since they planned out through phase 6. So how do all these parts from phase 4 work going forward into 5 and 6?
I mean, that's such a good question. And are we including the Disney Plus shows as well? Because we've been introduced to Ms. Marvel. We've been introduced to She-Hulk. So there's more new characters that have been added to the mix. And then there's even more new characters that's going to be added in phase 5. So I don't know. I feel like what Marvel Studios is trying to do, and Disney really ultimately, because Disney's bottom line is, capitalism, trying to make some money here, is to make sure that they get their return back off of the investment of launching this huge platform called Disney Plus. So that's why they're shilling out all of these movies. And then of course on the film side, they definitely want to be profitable with getting these films and putting them out in the theaters. But for us as fans, it can be confusing, because if they are still trying to tie everything together, it just feels very overwhelming when you're introducing more new characters. And is Ms. Marvel going to cross in with the Avengers films? Are we going to see She-Hulk, cross in with Loki or whatever, and these multiverses, So I don't know. I don't know what Marvel's plan is. It literally feels like they're throwing darts at a dartboard and just sort of randomly hashing out ideas. At one point, it did seem like they had a plan and that it was very seamless and that they were very focused on it. But now it feels very haphazard and uneven. And I think a lot of fans see that now. And now it's being reflected in how people are now responding to even Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So it's I want Marvel to do better because I grew up on Marvel comics. I'm a huge fan, and I really want them to be successful in their films. But if this is the path that they're going to continue on, it's not looking good.
So, Charles, we got 10 minutes ago, and Jamie speaks the truth. I think what has overwhelmed Marvel is how much money they made, right? So when they started looking at each one of these films was making $1 billion, they was like, I guess the shareholders were like, man, I know we're making 2 now, make 4. If they're going to be bringing in $1 billion, so the greed, I think, messed it up. Because to your point, the first 3 phases, it was clear Marvel had a plan, right? We were building up to something. And I think part of what the problem was, and I hate to keep harping on this because to me, it makes the most sense. The death of Chadwick Boseman really socked the MCU in the solar plexus, right? And I think, I'm not going to say Chadwick Boseman's death is the primary reason, but it is a huge part of what they're doing moving forward. Because even thinking about Wakanda Forever, right? And knowing now what the story would have been if Chadwick Boseman was there, that's a much different film than what Wakanda Forever is now. Wakanda Forever, I'm not going to say it was a disappointment, but it was such a somber kind of slog, man, sitting there while everybody is emoting for 2 hours and 2 hours and 40 minutes? It was just a long slog, man. And I was like, that movie had the potential of being so much better, but I understood why they made the moves that they made because all this stuff was kind of shrouded in grief. The grief of them having to turn around within 4 to 5 months, rewriting the screenplay after losing the leader of your franchise. So there's some bad luck, Jamie, it's involved with it. There's also a lot of greed that I think. And I think Marvel has become unfocused. And I think a lot of that also is around what's going on with these Disney Plus shows, because the shows, as I said earlier, used to tie into the films. And now it seems like these shows are out there. So you're creating almost something that Warner Brothers has. And Charles, am I right? So that Warner Brothers has like all of this television properties, and then they try to mix them in with the film properties, and the two just don't mix.
Well, I mean, at the first 3 phases, there was always the light at the end of the tunnel. We knew that there was an Avengers movie coming. And so people, as we were watching these films, Iron Man, Captain America, the Hulk, we've got this concept, that we got this idea that it's going somewhere. Now, with this new phase of things, the only team up that they've mentioned is the Thunderbolts. And so we don't really, we're kind of in the dark in this one. And so it's harder this time to say, oh, well, I'm trusting them. I know where this is going. I'm good, because everything just seems so random. And so it's like they're trying to tell like 2 different stories at the same time. You got a bunch of earthbound heroes and a whole bunch of spacebound heroes, and how do they mix, and are they going to mix, and what are we looking for? So, and we just keep getting more and more and more, and it's becoming, we don't see the same blueprint that we saw in the first 3 phases carrying out in the next 2 phases. So it really does lead. I mean, I know they've talked about Kang Dynasty coming, but who's in it? Who's out? How's it fate? It's just it's just crazy right now. So I mean, we're holding on with hope that something is going to materialize, and it just hasn't yet. Even with this film, we still don't see where this is going.
Jamie, we got.
I will add, Tim, you had mentioned that like the downhill of Marvel started with the loss of Chadwick with Wakanda Forever. I disagree with that. And I think that, quite frankly, Ryan Coogler handled it quite well and gracefully, the way he made that film. But I think it ended at Endgame. I think Endgame was their magnum opus. Right. And it's almost like Michael Jackson's Thriller, right? Okay. Like that was his magnum opus. And he always tried to capture the success that he had with Thriller and never quite got there. And I think that's where Marvel is with their films at this point. They're trying to capture the success that they had with Endgame, and it's just not happening. And that's where we are.
You got to remember, it took them 11 years to build to that, right? And I don't know if they've got another plan that they can that I don't think any other phase, they will never build up the way they built up the first 3 phases to get the end game, because you're right. I mean, Endgame was a masterpiece, man. At the end of that movie, I was like, whoa, because that was 3 hours. Wasn't that 3 hours and some change? Endgame?
Yeah.
Good film. That was a good film. And the send-off they gave to each of what you call the core characters, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow. I mean, that was amazing at the end of that film, man. Bruce Banner, all of those guys. So you're right. I think you have a good point, Jamie. And I'm just saying that the disappointment that I'm looking at in phase 4, I think about Black Widow. I think about the Eternals. I think about this oversaturation of all these Disney Plus shows, which at the time were cool. But for me, I think Marvel is at its best when all its properties kind of work simultaneously together, right? So the television stuff is feeding the films may kick some stuff back to the Disney Plus shows. So it's got to be circular. You can't have one area over here doing this, and then the area over here, the film's doing a different thing. And to Charles's point, you've got issues of folks fighting out in space. Now we're under the quantum realm. Like, how do we tie all these pieces together to create this harmonious universe with a plan moving into phase 5 and phase 6 that we can believe in?
Yeah.
Nobody
above
knows.
our pay grade.
I will say this. Marvel television, before Disney Plus, was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, 2 series that didn't really work with the universe at all and didn't work very well. So I don't think they really ever got the whole connection between television and movies well. And so even what they're doing now with Disney Plus, it still has that clunkiness to it that it just isn't meshing correctly.
All right. Well, we got about 3 minutes left in the show. Jamie, I'm glad you're here. We're going to have you back on, because anytime we can get somebody to come on here and give us the comic, the nerddom, the Black girl nerddom, I love it. So tell people where they can follow you and read your content, Jamie.
Yeah, you can follow us on all the socials at Black Girl Nerds. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Just at Black Girl Nerds is where you can find us. And you can read all of our content on blackgirlnerds.com. We also have a weekly podcast. You can search it on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. It's the Black Girl Nerds podcast.
Yeah, I've never been invited on Black Girl Nerds, but that's okay.
No,
that's okay. It's cool. It's cool.
I would assume that's because you're not a Black girl.
Right. Really? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
She's not a FilmGordon, but she's on Keeping It Real with FilmGordon, Smarty. And and Charles Kirkland, I understand that you have a wonderful review of Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania up on the FilmGordon.com. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. I just looked at it and I was like, hey, that's cool.
And you also have a string of Sundance films, some films that are coming down the pike that are also on the site.
That's correct. You are correct again, sir. I wonder how you knew all of that.
And man, I'm the hostess, as they, back in the day, we say the hostess with the mostest. I'm a guy, but I'm still a hostess with the mostest. So, Jamie, I got about a minute left, man. I just really am thankful that we finally connected, because,
Likewise.
I tease you for years, and all the times we always spend together when Charles is not around. That's the best time, when it's just me and you. But you got to get to some festivals, man. Jamie is always out and about. Come on, man.
Do I have to leave? Is it time for me to go now? Can I leave?
We got 50 seconds to go. So as we tell you guys in closing every week, please see something good at the movies. You've heard us talk a little bit about Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. there wasn't really a lot to say about this film. I would say go check it out on your own. Go pay the matinee price because movie tripping right now. I'm just keeping it real. This would be a matinee. If you pay full price, they got you. All right. So until next week, we are closing the book on episode 526. Join us next week. We'll have more of the big show. Jamie, thank you. Charles Kirkland, thank you. And until next week, man, you guys take care and we will see you. You enjoy. Have a nice one.